This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, when I talk about ESXi partitioning, okay, there are some standard partitioning layout that is the same since the very beginning. Okay, if you look at here, okay, this is the standard partitioning that we have since very long. Even I think from versions vSphere 3, we have the same kind of partitioning layout, and things have slightly changed very recently. Okay, in VMware version 6 and 7, they have kind of changed it, but again, it's not a drastical change in 6, but in 7 they have changed it completely. Okay, so even like in your Windows environment, you guys know, right? So there is something called pre-boot. Let me show you that. You can easily compare it with that. Okay, so you have this healthy recovery partition, and then the 499 MB of EFI system partition, right? The BIOS or the latest BIOS is the extensible firmware interface, right? So we have this 500 MB, right? So that is pretty much similar to your pre-boot in ESXi. So we have a pre-boot which has the boot.ini file and the boot configuration file that is needed to boot your system. So this is like kind of 4 MB in previous versions until 6. Okay, but then they have recently changed it to 100 MB as standard in vSphere 7. Okay, this has slightly changed because of some additional vSAN integration and some more additional requirements like auto deploy and those things that need some catching space. So they have kind of increased this to 100 MB. Okay, and the next partition is there are couple of partitions which is called as boot bank. You might have recalled this, like we upgraded or we did an upgrade from 6.5 to 6.7, right? At that time we got two different options or two different operating system as a choice to choose, right? So these two options are kind of storing two different operating systems. So the primary boot bank, which is again it was like 250 MB before, but then it has kind of changed now. Okay, I'll tell you what exactly the change is. So this has changed based on the size of disk that we are using for installation. Okay, primary boot bank and alternate boot bank, and this is again 250 MB previously up to until version vSphere 6, but now like it has kind of changed. Okay, let me kind of cover that as well. So if you look at vSphere 7, so we have again, there are always two boot banks that is always partitioned with this file system, FAT16 file system. Okay, FAT16 is the file system for both boot bank and primary boot banks. So always we have two boot banks. Okay, boot banks into two. Only we can have two versions at a time. Okay, and if you look at here, so if you are using a installation media, which is like kind of 4 GB to 10 GB, the size that will be allocated will be 500 MB. Okay, if you are using a media like USB drive or whatever SD card, okay, which is kind of sizing around 4 GB to 10 GB. Okay, it need not be a SD card alone. Even if you are giving a hard disk with a lesser size, this is how the partitioning layout will look like. Okay, it will allocate 500 MB for both primary and alternate boot bank. And if in case you are using 10 GB to 32 GB, the size will be 1 GB. But irrespective of the sizes, okay, your system boot will not change in 7. Okay, it is always 100 MB default in vSphere 7. I'm referring to, when I say vSphere 7, I'm referring to the ESXi hypervisor. Okay, and here we have this maybe USB stick or whatever it is. USB is just an example in my writing there. It does not just limit to USB alone. Even if you are having a hard disk with lesser size like 32 GB, your partitioning will look like only this. Okay, so 1 GB, and again this is 1 GB. And if you're going beyond a size of 32 GB, that is when it gets to 4 GB maximum. So this 4 GB is the maximum. Even if you're allocating 1 TB drive also, the maximum size of the boot banks will be 4 GB. Okay. So 32 and above. If you are having a disk, like it can be your HDD or your NVMe disk or SSD disk. So if you are providing a size greater than 32 GB, even on a USB drive, then your size will be 4 GB. Okay, 4 GB is the max for the boot bank. Okay, that is where the operating system binaries or operating system related files get stored. Okay, so boot bank will have all the operating system will related data. Okay, if you look at here, this is the system space to store all the OS related boot modules and data. Okay, let me just kind of note that here. Okay, so next comes the small core dump. Okay, so they call it as diagnostic partition 1 or small core dump. Okay, so we'll say that as diagnostic partition 1 or small core dump or mini dump, whatever best word you feel good. Okay, so they call it as mini dump in Windows and other world. Okay, so this is always like 110 MB before. Okay, and we have something called diagnostic partition 2, which is like a kind of complete system dump. Okay, complete memory dump or complete system dump, we can call this as complete memory dump. Okay, and this is always a greater size. Okay, 2.5 GB. Okay, let's see how this looks like in the current layout. Okay, this is like your vSphere 7, right? Until vSphere 6, starting from the initial version, we used to have these two partitions, okay, small core dump and large core dump, but these has got merged into something called ROM data. So ROM data is the new term in ESXi 7 or vSphere 7. Let me just insert a column here. In vSphere 7, this has become ROM data. Okay, in vSphere 7, they have two ESXi related partition, okay, which is called ROM data and RAM data. So if you ask me the difference between ROM data and RAM data, so as you might know, ROM always stores the rarely used data, right? And the RAM is something your physical memory, right? So it always stores frequently used data. It always stores frequently used data. So how we can segregate that? So if you look at here closely, I had a slide with data. Okay, so these are the examples for RAM data. So the system always writes log files, and then it always stores some traces. If it is like enabled with vSAN, it will also have the diagnostic partition for that. Whatever is getting accessed frequently, that will be getting stored into your RAM data. So your ESX OS data is kind of combined into two in vSphere 7, okay, in ESXi 7, and that is called as ROM data and RAM data. ROM is like rarely used data or infrequently used data. RAM is something which is kind of regularly used and frequently used data. So when you go to the ROM data, for example, the VMware tools you will not be using on a daily basis, but there are cases in a larger environment you can use it frequently. But the VMware tools and then the configuration changes and then the dump, whenever there is an issue, you will take the core dump. So both the dump has got fit into ROM data now. Okay, so ROM data has the core dumps now, mini core dump and the complete core dump. Okay, you guys are following me, right? My audio is clear, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, so if you look at here, these are the Linux partitioning layout, how it looks like. So if you look at here, in general, most of you guys know that /var/log is the partitioning where your log files are getting stored. Irrespective of any log, majority of the 90% of the log will be stored under var log. And the traces and the library files are getting stored under the direct/lib file. And then we have something called the running log, okay, whatever is currently happening, and then the /VMware partition. So these partitions are getting stored under the RAM. So these are the contents that are frequently used, the system library files, the /var/log, and then the VMware log. So the var partition is the one which is kind of getting stored under the frequently accessed. So /var is the partition where binaries and the log files, especially the log files will be getting stored there. Under the ROM data, you will have the ISO images, you will have the floppy images, and then the locked files, for example, the core dumps and the configuration. So those will be getting stored under the ROM data. Okay, so these are the two different things. Okay, so let's see what exact other things we have to discuss. So whatever space we have in addition to these allocations, it will be getting stored as VMFS data stores. In the VMFS data stores, we will be generally storing the virtual machine files. Okay, so VMFS data store is the one which gets utilized for whatever remaining space you have. So it can be 2 TB or 1 TB or even 100 MB. So that will get partitioned as a VMFS data store or some general data store name like data store 1 or data store 2, something like that. It will be used for storing your VM contents or like images or whatever you want to store there, the ISO files. Okay, you can use it for storing some virtual machine content, the VMFS file system contents. Okay, going back to the older partitioning layout. Okay, there is something called scratch partition, which is much important. I'll explain that in details now. So we had this scratch partition. The scratch partition will not get created if your installation media is very small. Okay, so the scratch partition only gets created when your partitioning layout is greater than 8 GB. Okay, note that. Okay, yeah, something called scratch partition. So the scratch partition gets created only when you have more than 8 GB of installation space, when you have allocated more than 8 GB of installation space. Okay, let me just bring that down. Okay, and then we have the store partition. Store partition is for storing your ISO images, the VMware tools and those things, right? So those things will be getting stored under the store partition. So that is like very small in size. Okay, 286 MB. So which is called your store partition. Okay, so these are the primary things that are part of your ESXi partitioning layout on the current version until 6.7. And in 7, as I said, there has been some drastical changes in that. And whatever remaining space, what you have will be formatted as VMFS partition. Okay, so this is like VMFS partition. And whatever the other partitioning, this will be system native partitioning. So you won't be able to, it's called system partition and Linux native partitions. Okay, similar to your Windows, you will not be able to do any kind of changes into that. This is the system partition, right? Partition.
So Stanley, I have a doubt.
Yeah. Yes.
So when you say the ESXi works wherever you are installing it, say for if you have been installing from an SD card or a USB or a local hard drive or a SAN hard drive, whatever it is, the ESXi works as it is, right?
Correct. It works the same wherever you install based on the speed and the technology that it is using. If you are using a USB 2 technology, then the performance will be little slower. But again, in everywhere, if you go like if you are using a SCSI card for your data drive or your OS drive, then obviously that depends, right? So it will take its own time based on the
So that is based on
technology.
the
Yeah,
IO performance.
correct. That is based on the IO performance. True.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if that is the case, when we are going with I mean SD card, we have a different sizes when we are going with SD card, USB, and a local hard disk. If that is the case, why do we need to? I mean, if the performance alone is a I mean difference, then why do we need to increase the I mean the spaces? We can just keep 4 MB, 250 MB, the same thing, right? For say, for example, in the primary boot bank, yeah, SD card varies from, I mean, it was initially it was 250 and it is comes to 500 MB and USB 1 GB and 32 GB on hard disk, right? I mean, 4 GB on a hard disk.
Correct.
When don't have any issues with the sizing, I mean, only the performance matters. Why we are having a change in the size?
Okay, so let me tell you that. Okay, that's a good question. See, in latest versions, what they have done is, okay, they have integrated some of the features like vSAN, and then there are a lot of new plugins, and there's a lot of integration options that has happened in vSphere 6 and 7. So before, we did not have storage defined, I mean software defined storage embedded into your vSphere or whatever hypervisor we are talking about. The ESXi hypervisor did not have the compatibility for your vSAN. Okay, vSAN is nothing but your software defined storage. And also we have a lot of plugins like vSphere replication and a lot of other plugins and installation bundle that has got embedded into your ESXi operating system. So that is the main reason that there is a drastical size changes that has happened in ESXi 7. In ESXi 6 also, they did not have that level of changes, but then they had a lot of issues in reaching to the closest or the maximum space. So they have designed like we have to start making use of the high endurance storage devices. When I say high endurance storage devices, most of the VMware recommendation is now towards the hard disk usage. Earlier, they were recommending to use it on SD card and USB disk and those things. But nowadays, they are preferring to go with SSD disk or NVMe disk as the minimum requirement. The reason is like we have a lot of technologies like the software defined storage, vSphere replication, and a lot of other similar installation plugins for third party integration and so many things. Okay, so those are all not working as intended on the USB and SD card. So they want something which is much faster and much endurance. Okay, so they have taken a complete drastical shift, and they have recommended to use a higher space for the boot bank and also for the system boot. When the system boots, even the vSAN related files and binaries, they are also getting started. Okay, so in this pre-boot, if you ask me what exactly is stored there, the bootloader and the EFI module. So similarly, I showed you, right? In Windows also, we found like the EFI module is stored there. So EFI is nothing but your BIOS. Okay, so the latest version of BIOS is extensible firmware interface, or you will get to know UEFI. So that is the latest version of it. So previously it is called as legacy BIOS, right? So the BIOS configuration and the BIOS related modules and the boot modules or the bootloader files are getting stored here. I'll not say boot modules, it is bootloader. In fact, boot modules get stored here. Okay, so these are the contents which is getting stored here. And now it also has to initialize the vSAN and other plugins that is needed to integrate with some third-party softwares and third-party plugins for replication and those other things. Okay, so that is the reason they have redefined the sizing or partitioning layout in vSphere 7. Okay, you'll get to know more about what exactly has got introduced in ESXi 7 and why we need a kind of drastical
No,
shift in the sizing. Yeah.
I think I understand the difference between ESXi 6.7 and I mean 7. There are a lot
Okay.
of changes.
Hmm.
I mean embedded thing. My query here it is when we say 500 MB is enough in an SD card, the same amount should be enough in a hard disk, right? When it goes to
Okay.
hard disk, it is going to 4 GB. So if you take only the boot bank capacity, I mean the requirement capacity is 500 GB alone, then remaining 3.5 GB is wasted, right? Just for information I'm asking.
Oh, you mean to say that the difference here in 1 GB and 500 MB? Oh,
500
okay,
MB,
okay.
1 GB, 4 GB, right? So
Uh-huh.
my ultimate requirement is 500 MB and is enough. When I can run in 500 MB, why I
Okay.
need to allocate 4 GB, which is of I mean the same component is doing that. Will there be any
Okay.
difference in the
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean
So yeah,
allocation?
your question is more aligned to the basic operating system functionality, right? For example, if you take a Windows server, okay, so the minimum requirements is something called 4 GB before, and if you take Windows 8 or Windows 10, you should have a bare minimum of 20 GB for installation alone. It will not support on a partition which is lesser than 8 GB, even though the contents needed for the operating system is like if you just write it, it will only write up to 2 GB or 2.5 GB, but still it will create a lot of caching space or buffer space for the virtual memory and whatever
So
additional
that is what
handling.
I was looking for. So
Yeah.
like a page memory, we have been allocating the remaining spaces. Is
Correct.
that
Page, yeah, that is kind of true, but page memory is going into the scratch partition or whatever additional paging file is getting stored outside of that. But still, the drivers, the plugins, okay, whatever additional catching that is happening because of the vSAN and whatever additional functionalities, okay, it is not just starting the service alone, right? When you talk about the pre-boot, only the services get started, only the plugins get started, only the modules gets loaded. But besides that, when the vSAN is functional, when the vSphere replication is happening, there are a lot of catching files that gets generated, a lot of catching files that are getting created. So for those, you need a better space to handle it better. So it is not that you should definitely have 4 GB, but if you allocate more space, then you don't have to worry about it in the near future. So it will, as you said, it will definitely work. This should be sufficient as per their design. But when you talk about Windows 10, are you really giving only 8 GB or 10 GB or 20 GB? No, right? You are giving 60 GB or 40 GB just to avoid any drastical issue on the operating system because of some catching space or because of some new errors getting generated, and that gets your log files full. Okay, so there are a lot of chances or cases where you don't want to take a chance against the corruption, right? So that is the reason whenever you have a space, allocate it more so that you don't have to worry about it in near future. You don't have to closely watch the space getting filled in and whatever it is. So when you go with the neck to neck situation, there are chances you have to monitor it closely. When you're going with a larger space and you are giving room for the catching and the log files, but still like you have time to react when you go for a larger space. Did I answer you? So I mean, it's like pretty basics around the operating system is what your question is. Okay.
okay? I
So
got it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay, guys. So let's move on with whatever the core dump and these things. Okay. So nowadays, like we have something called VMFSL. That is the latest partitioning. Okay, VMFSL is the new larger. I mean, to support the larger system configuration files and the status and whatever it is. Okay, we have this VMFSL partitioning. Okay, any other questions from any others? Okay, I know like this is kind of new for many of you. Okay, so as I said, when I say the high endurance disk, okay, so I'm referring to the SSD drive or whatever the NVMe SSD disks or even the HDD is considered as a hard disk drives are considered as a high endurance disk. Whenever the secondary high endurance disk is something like the USB or the SD card, so that is kind of non high endurance disk. Okay, so you can also store it there, but nowadays like VMware has started recommending to store it here. So there is something called locker file also. Okay, so the locker file is currently used not just for ESXi, it is also getting used for, 1 minute, let me just move that here. So I have this RAM data listed down. Okay, so it is not just used for locking the system files. So you know, right? So you cannot modify certain system related kernel modules and system related stuff. So those files are getting locked using the locker folder or the locker file. So whatever files you should not modify, like vSAN and the ESXi related partitioning contents, the configuration files, it will be stored under the locker. So I'm just talking too many things here, but where can we find how exactly the current partitioning and those looks like? Let me show it graphically so that if you guys have access in your environment, you can look at how it looks like. As Ila asked last week, we can definitely change the size, but again, I don't think there will be a regular requirement to do that, but you have an option to do to modify the partition. I'll show you where exactly and how exactly we can do it. Okay, so luckily I have my lab environment online. Let me kind of reconnect it to refresh it. Okay, so this is my vSphere 7. I'll also load the ESXi 6 in parallel. Okay, 192, 168, 104. So I don't want to take it completely theoretical, right? You should know where exactly we can find it graphically. You can find using the part_util command and the disk free command in the command prompt. But even on the graphical side, you will be able to see it. But you have to do it in a roundabout way. You don't see it directly on your main summary screen. So you have to get into your, so go to storage. Under the storage, you have the devices section. Okay, data stores, adapter, and the devices. Adapter is the intermediate connection devices. Under the devices, check for the partition that was initially created. This is the initial partitioning. Okay, len 0, target 0. Target 0 is generally used for the OS. Click on that. You can see the partitioning style or the partitioning layout, how it looks like. Let me move the go to meeting things. Okay, so this is how it is. Okay, this is what we are talking about since the morning. Okay, so we have this 4 MB EFI partition where the boot loader and then the EFI modules are getting stored, the BIOS and the boot file, the initial boot manager file. And then we have the 250 MB sizing for the primary and secondary boot partition, and then the 4 GB for the basic data, and then the diagnostic 1 and the diagnostic 2 partition. And then we have the store, and then whatever the free space is there. If you want to change it, you can just select that and then modify the partitioning. Okay, you can go to the actions and then the edit partitioning and change it. So my recommendation is not to change it unless you feel that you are not able to take a dump, and then you want to change it, you can change it. Okay, so I want to change some space, or I want to increase the VMFS partition and allocate the full allocated capacity. You can make the partitioning changes, but it is not recommended. Okay, similarly in latest version also, you can go to the devices and then do the same way. Okay, go to the target 0, and then you can find the same sizing, but it is completely different now, right? As I said, so the VMFS L is the partitioning for the ESXi OS data. So that has both ROM and RAM data. And then we have two different partitioning for the booting bank, okay, primary boot bank and the secondary boot bank. And we have got some 2 MB free space next to the boot partition, system boot. Okay, this has slightly changed. Even they are thinking that you might need additional space for your system boot. There are cases like we have seen that the system is not able to boot even with 100 MB because of the newer introduction of like latest services and plugins and modules. Okay, this is kind of getting fully utilized, and they have given the free space next to your system boot partition. Okay, so they have simplified it, but still like so that like whatever alternate things, like for example when you'll have something a rare case like taking diagnostics or taking core dump and mini dump, if they have different partitioning for that, they have to first take the small core dump. If that is working, then they will try the maximum full core dump. So those are the things they used to do before, but now they have simplified it in VMware 7. So many environment have not implemented this. So if you are looking at the production environments currently, it will kind of look like what I showed before in VMware 6. VMware 6 is what we have in most of the environment. This is how it looks like now. So we have 9 different partitioning layout, but when it comes to 7, they have kind of simplified it into very bare minimum 4. Okay. Any questions so far? Yeah.
So Stanley, when it
Yeah.
goes to 6.7, I can
Okay.
see the free space is 40 GB, whereas in 7 we have a free space of 2 MB. Say if I'm
Okay.
need to increase my boot space, I mean the what is that the pre-boot. In 7, where it will take the space. Say for example, I'm having 100 MB. I wanted an additional of another 200 MB. So where it will take it? Whereas in
No,
vSphere
that
6.7, it can able to
yeah.
take it from free space, whereas in 7 it cannot, right?
No, even in 7 also you have that challenge. So when you create it, if you are really looking for allocating additional space for the system boot, you have to repartitioning it completely. Okay, system boot can be changed only on command prompt, and that too you have to take a downtime and then do it. Okay, so it is not that easy, and there is never a case like to increase it from 100 MB to 300 MB. Okay, but your question is always valid. Okay, but you never get a case. And even if you look at here, okay, so you see this was like 4 MB before. In ESXi 6.7, it was only 4 MB. Now in 7, they have increased it to 100
I
MB
understand.
completely.
No, you are saying right. Even
Mm.
with 100 MB EFI system, there are many. Environments you have seen that they are not sufficient. That's the reason I'm asking.
Correct. So when you go for vSAN and whatever it is kind of reaching it close. So that's what I said, right? In vSphere 7, they have given the free space next to the boot system. So you are asking the question
But the
just
free space is not
inversely.
very much high, right? It is just a 2 MB, right? So which is
That is
2%
what,
of
see,
the.
whatever I have allocated here is 40 GB. If you're allocating
Okay.
whatever more, for example, see, in the diagram here or in the explanation here, whatever remaining space that will come next to the system boot. So in my current ESXi installation, I've got only 2 MB free space, and that is the reason it is showing whatever free space there. So if you are having more than that, if your media size is more than 128 GB, whatever remaining space we have, it will get allocated next to the system boot. Okay, earlier in 6.7, whatever you have in the current production environment, this is what you will have in the current production environment. So we have that challenge. Okay, so will not get the free space next to the boot. You have to get into the command prompt. You have to take a downtime and then change it. So when I say downtime, it is only for your ESXi host, right? Your virtual machines can be moved to another ESXi host, and then so this will not impact your end production environment. But still, to make some changes, you have to take some downtime and then get into the command prompt and use parted util command to change it. But when it comes to 7, so they have kind of realigned it so that you don't have to take downtime and then do some whatever changes. So that is the reason they have added the free space next to it. So the challenges that I'm saying is there in version 6. So this is the version 6. Okay, so this is version 6. Okay, I think I have like in different location. Maybe I'll just bring it to next year. So this is version 6 where we had a lot of challenge. In 7 they have fixed all of those. Okay, and simple as that. Okay, in 7 we don't have to worry about it. Okay, this is version 7 and this is version 6.
So
Yeah.
I mean, go to that partition.
Yeah.
In 7.7.
In 7, right? Okay.
7 or 6. Okay. So
Okay.
okay. So here you have given on a lab setup, right? What is on a? I mean, what did you? I mean, have you ever seen the latest? I mean, the real-time production environment. What would be the recommended thing? I mean, this is for a lab environment you are given it.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
on a real time, what would be the allocation?
Okay, so if you are installing it on a USB or a SD card, they are recommending for a minimum of 32 GB, right?
Just for I mean hard. I mean a system. Hard. I
Yeah,
mean
it should be. Yeah, it should be 128 GB is what we discussed, right? So when we discussed about the initial installation requirements, so I was telling 32 GB for HDD and SSD. Let me show that again for you. So if you are installing it on a SD card or a USB stick, 8 GB is sufficient. But if you are going for a HDD, minimum of 32 GB. This is what is recommended minimum. Okay, but you can go up to 128 GB for HDD and SSD.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that okay, or should I have to any other question? So in
No,
7 they have
why I'm asking is
fixed
that
options.
why
Yeah.
I'm asking is that in the environment, I have seen they are planning for 7, so they are making a capacity calculation for around 200 GB. That's the reason I've been looking on.
200 GB, huh? Okay.
Uh,
Okay. I think whatever 200 GB, it will go unallocated or wasted only. See, if you look at the sizing here, see, remaining space, whatever the media size more than 128 GB, it is going to be used for virtual machine only. Whatever you are allocating beyond 128 GB, whatever that 72 GB, that will be created as a VMFS partition only, VMFS data store partition. It will not be used for your operating system, ESXi operating system. Okay, it can only maximum utilize up to 128 GB. That is way more sufficient. Yeah. Okay, guys. So I think we have kind of covered. Okay, in vSphere 7, we also see this vSAN partition. Okay, that is mainly used for your vSAN data store. That is new in latest versions, like starting 6. We have that vSAN partition also. If you have selected, if you are enabled vSAN, you will also have that vSAN data store, virtual SAN. Okay, this is your software defined storage. Okay, so that is kind of new in starting 6, but again not every company have started using it, but if in case you're using it, you have to make use of that. 1 minute, guys. Okay, so whenever you see the boot bank, okay, there is some more things that you have to understand on the boot bank. So generally the files getting stored there, okay, it is generally compressed. Okay, so even if you are going with kind of free space issues, it also has inbuilt technology to compress and then decompress during the boot. So when it is getting stored, it is always stored in a compressed format. Okay, in Windows, sorry, in VMware, they call it as VXX file system, like similar to your Linux, like we have some gunzip, and then whatever, like in your Windows, like we have your zip and rar, those things, right? So here they have their proprietary VMware compression formatting technology that gets stored as .v00 and v01 and something like that. Okay, so when you go to Linux and those things, you will see .gz extension, .zip extension, .rar extension, right? So here, when the contents are getting stored, okay, it will be compressed and getting stored like this, and then when it is like getting booted up, it is a kind of decompressed. This happens on the back end without you noticing it, but just want to highlight it. Maybe so when it is stored, like it will occupy only lesser space. So since his question was very much aligned to this, I want to explain it. Okay, it is not that on when it is stored, it might be lesser space, but again when it boots, it needs more space to boot. Okay, so that is the reason I'm telling. So give as much as space possible so that you don't end up with a lot of issues. Okay, so don't consider that the maximum utilization at the stored content is not the same when it is booting. When it is booting, all the files required for the booting or the services starting or the modules loading, it on the during the boot, whatever the contents is inside this .v0, it gets decompressed, and then during the boot, it always, as you guys know, it gets loaded into your system memory, right, for faster booting. So that is what it happens. It uncompresses and then it puts into your system memory. When the machine is booted up successfully, and then it compresses again, it gets stored into your boot bank or the boot partition. Okay, so this is a backend thing. Okay, you don't have to think too much into it. Let's talk about the other important things. Okay, so the small core dump, the mini core dump, right, which is called as the first diagnostic partition or the diagnostic partition 1. So this is mainly used when whenever there is a crash, or whenever there is a purple screen of death. Okay, so I'll explain that. First diagnostic partition. Okay, so in Linux or in Windows, we call it as blue screen of death. Here in VMware, we call it as purple screen of death. We get a purple screen. Okay, whenever there is an issue, okay, we'll get a whenever the ESXi get crashed, okay, so we get a purple screen of death. The host dump file, whatever the dumping has happened, like every operating system has that procedure, right? So that will get stored into your first diagnostic partition whenever there is a crash. So the dump file will get stored into this particular partition. Take open. Okay, guys, so with that, any questions, anything missing? Okay, so what is this store, right? Let's explain. Let me explain that store alone. So store stores the contents of the tools. Okay, so we were talking about VMware tools, right? We have different VMware tools for Windows, Linux, and those things. So I'll show you where exactly it is. You will not be able to see that on the data store directly. Okay, if you get into the data store or the sizing, you will not be able to see that. 1 minute. Okay, you will not be able to see that contents anywhere here. Okay, those whatever we are talking about, the store partition, right? You will not see it here, but when you get into your virtual machine, okay, when you go to your data store, when you browse it, you can see it here. Okay, this is what I'm talking about as /store partition, the VM images. So it has the VMware tools for Linux, Windows, and whatever operating system that is supported in the latest thing. So they have the ISO files. So whenever you want to install the VMware tools, it gets mounted up from this tools-ISO images folder. Okay, so that is where it comes from. Okay, let me kind of take a quick snap here and then get it stored on the Excel sheet. So the Excel sheet will be available for your reference. Okay, so you can make use of it. Okay, even you can refer for more data and then use it. Okay, under the data store, there is a folder called VM images. That is what is getting stored under the store partition.
So if I want to have
Okay,
a
so
customized
the store partition, it stores the VMware tools ISO files. You just saw that in real environment, right? Sorry.
so if I'm having a customized image, say vendor image, so will it be available in that location, or any location I can place it?
No, so that is what it is, right? So for appliances, you should not change the VMware tools. For appliances, you should use the vendor provided VMware tools. Okay, if in case you want to change it, you have to directly download it into your operating system and then upgrade it. Only the default VMware provided ISO images for Windows, Linux, and operating systems that is supported, it will be getting stored under tools-ISO images. But if in case there is something that your vendor provides in an ISO format, you can download and store it in VMware data store directly and then mount it on your CD and then use it. If in case they have provided you a zip file or an EXE, download it directly into your appliance and then load it. So that will not, whatever the vendor provided things, it will not get stored under here. But there is a way that if you already know that this is needed in future, you can use the VMware image builder and then inject that particular ISO file into your installation bundle. Okay, that is also possible, but that is a very rare scenario. Okay, so what I'm saying is like it is feasible, but it is a very rare case. But whatever vendor provides, you have to download it directly into that specific appliance or whatever virtual machine that you want to install it, and then install it there only. So this is getting whatever getting stored here. It is the default ISO images from VMware. Okay, is it okay?
So
Yeah.
it's only the ISO image we will be having it, right?
Yeah, in general, it is always ISO files, but appliances, like for appliances, like if you are using a network virtual appliance from a vendor like Cisco or whatever, any company for some caching and whatever it is, like they provide it in a zip format or gun zip format. They provide it in different format. Even they provide it in a RPM also, Red Hat Package Manager file also. Okay, it depends. See, that is a rare situation where you want to upgrade the VMware tools to fix some appliance related issues. Only for that, even on your real production environment, the VMware tools will be older always on the appliances. The reason is you should not change anything that vendor has not suggested it. Okay, so you should go with the whatever available version that has come with the appliance. You have to raise a case to check whether they have a newer version of tools or whatever it is, or supported VM hardware. If the vendor says it is okay to go with the newer tools, you can download it and do it. Unless and otherwise, the appliances are always an exception for VMware tools and VM hardware.
Okay, so this
Yeah.
OVA file will come under templates or images.
OVF file. Okay, those are all something little different. Okay, you're talking about template files. Okay, so template, there are multiple different formats, right? So whatever you said, this OVF, OVA, these are all open virtualization format, right? So open virtualization format is, it can be supported on any virtualization like VMware or Microsoft or Zen or whatever it is. You can use this kind of file to deploy a virtual machine from the template, right? So deploy a VM from template. You can use this OVF or whatever it is. But in VMware, we are using VMDK. So VMDK is what used for your template, and on the configuration, it will be VMTX for the configuration file. So this is the combination that you generally get within VMware. But if you are downloading a third-party appliance or a third-party tool, you will go with OVF and OVA. That is like outside of this discussion what we are having. So that is to create a virtual machine using template. So let me complete this one. Okay.
Okay.
The last one is the scratch partition. So the scratch partition, it depends, right? It changes based on your sizing, whatever, as I said, whatever size you are allocating, the remaining space will be getting allocated up to 128 GB. It will be allocated for the ESXi data. Okay, in general, you need a minimum of 4 GB vFAT partition. Okay, it is a vFAT partition of 4 GB. That is where you get the complete content. For example, when VMware asks you for raising a case, you generally run a command called vm-support, or you actually generate a log file logging into your VMware environment here. Okay, so on your host, on the actions, you generally generate a support bundle. This is the complete support bundle for your ESXi host. So in general, if you want to run it from command prompt, you generally run a command called vm-support, or in graphically you generate the support bundle here. This is what is getting stored under the scratch partition. Okay, the VM support output, and also, okay, this is mainly used to analyze your cause, right? So analyze the cause of any system issues, or any system failure, whatever it is, right? So those are all needed by your VMware support team, and that is what is getting stored here for your VMware support team. This
So
is the
this is
command, okay? Yeah.
6.7, and in
No,
7.
it is there since beginning. Okay, so this
No, no, no.
stuff is there.
I'm asking where it will store. I mean, in 7.
In 7 scratch partition, okay, and the scratch is part of your ESXi OS data. So now everything is into ESX OS data, the mini dump, the core dump, and the full dump, and then the scratch partition. Everything has got combined into your. Okay, I think we skipped that. Okay, see, if you look at here, this is what it is: the small core dump, the locker, the large core dump, the scratch partition. Everything has combined into your ROM data.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Stanley, Prasad here.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, Prasad. Yeah.
uh, uh, as a best practice, I think we need to keep it out of that. I mean, in specific data stores, it's better, right? Scratch partition
Yeah,
instead
so
of on
that is what
local.
it was before in until VMware 6. Even that is what I used to say. Like you have to keep it outside of that. Even in VMware version 6, until VMware version 6, it used to be a separate partition so that the dumping of the content or whatever the generate bundle will not impact the running operating system. That is what it used to be. But now we have a lot of technologies, like even the minimal SSD size have grown like anything, right? You are getting a bigger size hard disk for the SSD, and that is the reason they have started using the default ESXi OS data in version 7, and VMware is pretty much comfortable with that. Okay, but whatever you said is the best practice. Until version 6, we need a separate partition, and we should not keep it on the system. Like that is a known thing, right? So if you are putting it somewhere into this partitions, if if that is getting completely filled in, like if there is a lot of logs, or if there is a lot of system swap that is happening, everything will get into your main space, and then that will bring trouble to your core operating system, right? So in up to VMware version 6, we used to have a separate partition, but then we have we have got a lot of SSD new technology, and we have got a lot of space now. So the VMware have decided to use the ESXi OS data, and that to the ROM data partition for storing the VMware bundle or the diagnostic information. Yeah.
Yeah. In case the disk size is more, in case, for example,
Yeah.
right now, if you have the SSD size itself less, so we can make it. I mean, out of the local disk, right? So right now, I can consider this as a local disk, SSD, whatever we are installing the
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
yes. I have a very, I mean, might be it is a minimum. I have not checked actually. What is the minimum? Minimum? How much
Okay.
minimum it's required? Personally, here
Minimum is 4 GB. Okay, so for
4 GB.
example, see, yeah, so if you look at here, there is details mentioned here, right? Let me just quickly show you
Yeah.
that. Okay, see, here it is. Okay, so the scratch partition gets created only when your installation media is greater than 8.5 GB. If you are giving something like lesser than 8 GB, like your USB or SD card, the scratch partition will not get created.
Okay, in that such case, we can configure even outside of the local, right? I mean,
Right. You can expand
shared.
this. You can give it on a separate data store. You can move it. That is there.
Okay,
But in general, this gets created only when you have a minimum space of 8.5 GB on your installation media. If there is no space, if it is lesser than 8.5 GB, like for example 8 GB USB stick or 8 GB SD card, we used to manually create the scratch partition on the non-system thing. I think you might have also done
correct.
that. Okay, so yeah.
Yes,
So
yes,
whenever we install it on a USB stick or an SD card, the scratch partition does not get created automatically because the size was a bit
correct,
pretty less. And we used to
correct.
manually log into the VMware console, and then we create a scratch partition on the separate data store. That is the general practice we used to do until version 6. What I am saying is, like in 7, since the technology has changed, since the minimum size has on the SSD has changed, so they have started putting it into the ROM data. So some slight changes are there, but whatever you are saying is the valid practice as on date, and that will continue for next 1 or 2 years, because we are mostly using version 6, right? So we either get a scratch partition automatically created if you are providing a space more than 8.5 GB. But if in case you are providing something lesser and you need a scratch partition for storing your swap files and storing your VM support bundle, you have to manually create it. I'll show you how to go and create that scratch partition manually. Okay, I'll show you the demo.
Yeah.
Okay, did I answer you, Prasad?
Yes, certainly. No. What my
Okay.
last question? In
Mhm.
case,
Yeah,
for
sure.
example, now just I can consider my whatever the where I'm going to install that operating system, which I am
Mhm.
having very less space. So
Uh-huh.
even though I can create a separate scratch partition out of that local, I mean shared data stores. So even in 7, or it is not recommended.
7, it is not explicit, right? So see, 7, if you look at the partitioning style, I just showed you, right? So you don't have that similar thing anymore. Okay, everything has mixed into ESXi OS data. So that is the challenge here. Okay, so earlier we used to have something called Scratch separately, but everything is now into a single ESXi OS data, which is like whatever free space, 40 GB or 80 GB or 128 GB, that gets stored into a combined thing. So your scratch is into this. So you don't have an option anymore in 7. Okay, but in 6, whatever you are asking is valid. Okay, so you can actually select whatever the scratch partition is, and then you can modify it. You can move it. You can put it into a shared data store, and then yeah. So that is possible only up to version 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can also get into your ESXi host and cluster view, and then go to the advanced setting and configure the scratch. Oh, okay. I was that screen only, right? Okay. So you had this whatever the scratch partition in okay, in this partition I did not have created it. Okay, I'll show you practically how to create it. Yeah, until version 6 you will be able to modify whatever this basic 4 GB sizing, and you can change it. Okay, you can even increase it whatever space you needed. But in 7 they have deprecated it, or not deprecated. In fact, they have combined it into your ESXOS data. Okay, so I think I have covered whatever the different partitioning styles. Okay, let me kind of explain it. Okay, we can also go and see in command also. Okay, let me explain that first before getting any questions on the partitioning. I think we have covered way too many things. Okay, you will never get into a situation where you will get too deep into this very frequently, but it is good to know, right? It is good to know what is happening on your operating system partitioning and those things. But in real case scenarios, you never get into such level of deep dive discussions. Okay, but again, so I'll share this Excel sheet with you. You can just kind of use it as a cross reference, and you can read how the different partitioning and those things look like. Okay, Ila, any question? Prasad, any question? Or others, any question before we move into the next
No questions.
set of configuration?
Stanley.
Sorry. All right. Okay.
No questions.
Stanley, I have a
Yes, yes.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm very new to the VM. So
Yes.
just when it comes to the purple screen,
Yeah.
so for example, the CSX has got crashed. How do we reach
Okay.
that particular to fix that?
Okay. Right. It is pretty much similar to your blue screen. I'll show you an example. Okay, I'll take an example, and then I'll go through that each and every line. There are some 4 lines which we generally look into, and then with that 4 lines, you will be able to relate it, whether it is related to network or whether it is related to your HBA or whatever devices, or what exactly is the problem can be identified using that 4 lines. I'll show you that. Okay, I'll take an example and then run through that. I have a module explaining that. Okay, but I'll made a note of your question. Yeah, so
Yeah.
whatever thing you said is like the purple screen of death, the whatever contents that is getting generated out of it will be getting stored under the mini core dump, the first diagnostic partition. That is what you can understand as of now, but I'll explain. I'll take a couple of screenshots and then explain you what are the different lines inside that PSOD file, and then what exactly that does that mean. Okay, I'll explain that.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, so the next one is we'll get into the ESXi configuration. Okay, configuration options. I know some of you have joined from the weekend batch. Okay, for you guys, it will be a repetition of discussion. But anyway, so you can listen into it. Okay, so when you log into your direct console on the ESXi, okay, you have the very first screen. This is the F1 screen. Okay, the function, if you press F1, you get into the command prompt mode. Okay, function key 1 or F1. So initially we used to call this as console mode. In very initial version, like we called it as service console or console mode. And later they changed it as tech support mode, TSM mode. They call it as a TSM mode. Okay, not your Tivoli storage manager, but yeah, it is TSM mode here in ESXi. And then now they have termed it as ESXi shell. Everything is the same. Okay, service console, tech support mode, ESXi shell. If you press F1 on your ESXi operating system, the screen that comes for you to manage it on the command line, that is called ESXi shell or service console or tech support mode. When you press F2, you get an option called DC UI. Okay, so whenever you connect a monitor directly to your server hardware which has ESXi operating system, so this is the GUI screen you get, a direct console user interface, or we call it as graphical user interface. Okay, it's not too graphical, but it has got some colors there. Okay, so I'll show you that. And when you press F11, okay, so I'll go through that. See, if you press F2 here, this is the screen you get. Okay, let me maximize it. Okay, this is the main home screen or the DC UI screen. I think I typed it wrongly. 1 minute. Okay. Okay, so this is the DC UI screen or the direct console user interface screen. And if you press Alt F11, okay, you will get this information. Okay, whether there is any warning on your hardware, or what is the configuration, what is the memory size, what is the CPU we are using, what is the VM kernel build version. So those things will be available on your F11. Okay, if you press function key 11, you will get the system related information. Okay, when I say system related information, whatever VM kernel version or the ESXi operating system version. And you will also have the memory and CPU related, hardware related details. Okay, also any errors related to your CPU and memory. Okay, so that is there on F11. And if you press F12, you will have the system logs. Okay, whatever current logs and those things, you will have it here on Alt F12. If you press Alt F12, 1 minute. So we rolled back the previous image on the other day, right? Last Friday or something, like we rolled back. That is the message that you are seeing on Alt F11. So this is Alt F12, where you can see the current system logs, whatever logs you are going. So if you press H here, it will give you the option what you want to do. Like it is similar to your VI editor, okay, where you can just use some function key to scroll up, scroll down, and then you can go back to the shell terminal. Okay, so these are the three different important things that you have to know. Okay, F1 is the shell terminal, F2 is the configuration terminal, F11 is the status terminal. Okay, so understand it that way so that it is easier for you. Okay, we call it as F1 as shell terminal. Okay, everything is a terminal in Linux world, right? So you have different terminals. This is shell terminal, this is configuration terminal, and then this is the status terminal. Okay, simple as that. Okay, so everything is called a terminal in Linux ESXi, and even in Windows also, in Linux also, you have multiple function keys, right? You can press F1, F2, F3, and then you will have a GUI at F7 or F8, depends on the Linux version that you are using. Here, only these function keys will work. Okay, and mostly we will be using this configuration terminal to make some configuration changes. And now we'll start with what are the different configuration options on the DC UI. Okay, let's see that. Okay. Okay, we'll go to Alt F2 and then get into it. Okay, these are the customization that option that we have. The very first option is your configure password. Okay, you get the option to change your password. So set password is there, but again, in fact, it is to reset your password. Once you are logged in, you will change the password. Okay, and as I said the other day, the configuration lockdown option, okay, the lockdown mode, you can only configure that when your system is connected to your vCenter. Okay, only
Integrated,
after, sorry.
integrated vCenter.
Yeah, when it is integrated or connected to vCenter, you will get that option. Because if you disable this lockdown mode only when you have ESXi alone, then you will not be able to manage it, right? So this option will
Yeah.
get enabled whenever you integrate with vCenter. Now this particular machine is already integrated with vCenter, and that is the reason you'd see that option is allowed to be selected. But yeah, in regular installation at the very first beginning time, you won't get that option enabled. Okay, so the next option is the configure management network. Okay, so there are 4 different options related to network. Okay, the next section is related to your network configuration, configure management network, and then you have the option to reset your network settings, and then you have the option to test the management network. You can ping your gateway, or you can ping any 3 IP address. Okay, any 3 external IP address. Okay, in general we have the gateway, default gateway, and then your DNS or domain controller, whatever it is, right? So you generally ping that, and internal or external DNS. Okay, you ping those IP address, and then you have the option to restart the management network. If in case there is some issue like you're not able to connect to your management, ESXi management, you can restart it. When we say management, we are referring to the ESXi management here. Okay, ESXi management network. So under the configuration management network, you have the option to configure the IP address and those things. Okay, it has a timeout. Okay, so you can actually change that. If you go to the troubleshooting option, you have the option to change the idle timeout for your DCUI. That is the reason it is getting timed out, and you're seeing enter, you are asking to enter password. Okay, if you go to the configure management network, you have the option to choose which are the network adapters you want to use it for your ESXi operating system, and you can provide a VLAN number for your ESXi operating system. Okay, if you have a specific VLAN allocated, or if you have a specific VLAN assigned to your ESXi management, you can enter that VLAN in your production environment. And here is where you configure the IP address. In production environment, we generally don't go with dynamic, we generally go with static. So we'll provide whatever IP on the range allocated for this ESXi management, subnet mask, and then the gateway, and then you give enter. Okay, in general, you go for a static addresses in production environment. And you can also disable this IP version 6 if you're not using it, but there is a restart that is needed. Okay, you need to restart the entire operating system in order to disable the IP version 6. Okay, this is under the configuration management network. So system restart is needed to disable. Okay, and also you configure the IP version 4 address, and you need to have a static IP address there. Okay, the next option you have is DNS configuration. Under DNS configuration is where you give the host name. Okay, so people will check for the option to change the host name, but here it is like, I mean, the option is under the DNS configuration. So you can give it a name. You can also give a fully qualified domain name here. Okay, and you can enter. So under DNS configuration is where you get the option to change your DNS servers and the host name. Host name or the system name or fully qualified domain name. Okay, and you get the DNS server entries. Like in your network card, you get the DNS server entries, right? So in Windows, like you go to your network card and then provide a DNS suffix, DNS server entries. So those can be entered into your DNS configuration here. The last option is your custom DNS suffix. Okay, this is not like the dining to the domain. It is very much similar to your network configuration, right? When you get into your system network, you have the option to specify the DNS suffix on how the queries can be routed, right? So let it get open. Okay, it's open here. You go to your network card. On the second tab, okay, you have the option to specify your DNS suffix. Okay, when you select your IP version 4, some reason it is pretty slow. Okay, so here under the advanced option, you specify the DNS, right? So this is the same option. Okay, so DNS suffix for this connection. That is what we are specifying. We are not joining it to the domain. Joining the ESX to domain is a separate process. We'll see it little later. But the option that we are putting it here is similar to your network configuration DNS suffix. Okay, so I'll give an escape here. Okay, so these are the options you get under configure management network. So you get an option to choose which network adapter you want to use it for your ESXi management, and what is the VLAN that this ESXi management is part of. Okay, so and then the restart management network is to restart if in case of any connectivity issues. Okay, if you are seeing any network connectivity issues, you can give it a restart. It will only disturb the ESXi management connection alone. It will not disturb your virtual machine connections or whatever VM traffic. It will not impact if you have separate network for ESXi management and virtual machine. But if you have a shared network for your ESXi management and VM configuration, even in that case also, the restart network connectivity option will not disturb your virtual machine traffic. Virtual machine traffic is isolated. Okay, so you have to, if you restart the management network, it will impact only the connection to your ESXi operating system. Okay, it will not disturb your virtual machine.
Can you come
Yeah.
again this restart network management?
Okay, so you have a different network traffic configured, right? ESXi management is something like your ESXi OS connectivity, OS network. Okay, and you have your virtual machines. So that is nothing but your VM traffic. So VM traffic is always segregated from your ESXi operating system traffic. So that means when you're restarting this management network, it only disrupts the connection to your ESXi management. Until it comes back, you will not be able to manage your ESXi operating system, but your virtual machine will remain undisturbed. Okay, it will be still available on your network, and you will be the traffic for the virtual machine will still be flowing outside, and incoming traffic will be there. So restart management network, it only restarts the ESXi OS connection alone. Okay, it will not disturb your virtual machine traffic. Okay, so the next thing is, okay, so I have changed something on your network configuration, right? So any changes to your management network, you have to restart the management network. Okay, I've just given a yes, and then it is restarted. Okay, and you can just test the network connectivity. As I said, you can ping any 3 external IP address. So here the first IP address is the gateway, second is my domain controller or the DNS server. This is my external Google DNS, right? Global DNS. And also I can check whether I have a DNS resolution. So I don't think I have a DNS resolution, but again, let me quickly go and do that so that I don't get a
Stanley,
fail.
can we not?
Yeah.
So Stanley, can we not able to? I mean, give these details when the server is up and something.
You mean to say I did not get that? What is that?
No, this is from the function key while booting up, right?
Mm-hmm.
While
No,
booting up,
not while
we
booting up. Not while booting up. This machine is already online and we are configuring it. This is not while booting up. This is already the machine is online and we are using the F2 option after the machine is online. This is the maximum configuration screen that you get in ESXi operating system. Okay, so you won't get anything
the
beyond this.
F2 key will be pressed while booting up, right? I'm not
No,
clear
not
on that.
while booting up. After the machine is online, the F2 key can be used actually, not while booting up.
Okay, I
Yeah.
thought while booting up.
No, not while booting up. The machine is already online and you are configuring it now. So, okay, so ESXi, so this is what I have, right? ESXi 65S1, 65S1. Okay, the IP address is 192.168.0.104. Okay, so that I don't get any error here. Okay, now we can just give enter. It will ping the gateway, it will ping the DNS server, and it will ping the external DNS. Everything is working fine. So even the DNS resolution also, it is working because I've added an entry now. Okay, so this is how it should work, look like in your general environment. In real production environment, you might not have a internet access. So in general, we'll have primary DNS and secondary DNS, and that will also work. Okay, so here I'm using internet connectivity is there. So that is the reason you are able to reach the global Google DNS. Okay, the network restore, it will completely restore your configuration settings. If you have made some changes and that have disrupted your connectivity, it will completely reset. Okay, and so the problem is, okay, it will also reset from distributed switch to standard switch, or whatever changes you had made on the management network port, everything will get reset. You have to just configure it again from the scratch. Okay, so the network restore option, you have to deal with it little configure. Okay, the restore network or the reset network config. So it will reset from VMware distributed switch to VMware standard switch. We'll discuss that little later, what exactly is standard switch, distributed switch, and those things. And it will reset the configuration, network configuration. So that is what it is, right? So it is understandable. So whatever changes you have made, it will also get changed to default. Okay, the next option is the configure keyboard layout. Okay, that is where you give the language that you want to manage the ESXi operating system, whatever keyboard you are using. If you're using a US default keyboard, you can use it, or else if you want to change the language, you can go and change whatever language you are managing it from. Okay, and the next option is very, very important. So this is the troubleshooting option. Troubleshooting option has the most important ESXi shell. ESXi shell is nothing but your Alt F1, right? So if I disable this, now it is disabled. If you go to Alt F1, if you just exit, you won't get the login prompt anymore. Okay, the existing sessions will not be interrupted if you disable it. Okay, but if in case you want, you are disabled it, and then you have moved to the F1, you will not see an option to enter the username and password. The login will be disabled. Okay, so this is your troubleshooting option, right? And before that, you have the configure keyboard layout. Okay, in general, we give US English. Okay, that is default, and you can change it. And under troubleshooting options, you get an option to select your ESXi shell. ESXi shell is nothing but your shell terminal or F1. Okay, and it will be disabled if you are, but the best practice is to keep it disabled only. Okay, only when there is a troubleshooting required, you have to enable ESXi shell and SSH or whatever secure shell, right? So these things are needed only when there is an issue. Okay, so you should not have it enabled. Best practice is to have it disabled. Even this one. Okay, both the things have to be disabled, and we have an option to configure the timeout for the DC UI. Okay, so when there is an idle timeout, you are not using the system and you have kept it logged in, it will automatically time out and log out. Okay, so you have that ESXi shell timeout, SSH timeout, and then DCUI timeout. And if you want to restart the management agent, if your machine is not able to be controlled from the vCenter or any external tool like backup software or any management software, you can restart the management agent. Okay, so restart. Okay, this one is ESXi shell and SSH idle timeout. Okay, and the last one is restart management agent. So if you're not able to manage it from vCenter or any management software, okay, like SCVMM, okay, if you're not able to manage it remotely from any management software, you can kind of restart the management agent to re-establish the session. Okay, so these are the different options we have under troubleshooting stuff. So as I said, the best practice is to have the ESXi shell and SSH disable unless you need a VMware team supporting it, or you want to troubleshoot some, you run some command, you can have to enable it. And in general, like what we do is we use a couple of commands. In latest version, we use ESXCLI, and there are a lot of commands. Okay, DCLI and ESXCF, GVI, CFG, a lot of different commands are there, but everything has got combined into ESXCLI in version 7. Okay, or when you ask VMware team to log in and troubleshoot along with you, they generally use something called local CLI. It is very much similar to your ESX CLI. Okay, it is only for troubleshooting purpose. Okay, I'll explain that different options under ESXi CLI tomorrow. Okay, on Wednesday. And coming back here,
So these are the things like ESXi shell and secure shell. We can enable it from outside also, right? Not from
Yeah.
the
No, see,
DC.
if you want to enable it, you have to enable it from here only. Okay, but there is an option. Okay, for example, okay, so let me tell you. So that's a good question. So, for example, I have enabled. I have currently enabled SSH, right? So if you go here on this machine, if you go to the summary, you will see a warning there. It will say like your ESXi shell and SSH is enabled. It is not a best practice. Disable it. You can enable and disable it here itself. Okay, you can disable it, and then you can also enable it if needed. Also, if you go to the manage option under services, you can also enable and start the service and enable it. Okay, that option is also there. The tech support mode is nothing but your ESXi shell. Okay, so people call it as TSM. That is the same thing as ESXi. Okay, so you can manage it from ESXi shell also. Also, you can manage it from your PuTTY also. Okay, let me show you. If you go here, if you enter a username and password, even here, if you type DCUI, it will open the same screen, whatever we are seeing. If you press F2 here,
Yeah.
you'll get the same option and you can change whatever you want to. Yeah, you can do it here from here also, even from a remote SSH session also. Okay, so you can just
Okay.
press F2. You can change whatever you want to change here under troubleshooting. Okay, so the GUI will be black and white in the SSH, but still you have all the option to do it. Okay, you can remotely manage it also. Yeah, that's a good thing. Okay, so the next option is, okay, the system log. Okay, we'll get into the maximum details possible right away. Okay, after completing the other two options, we'll talk about the different system logs in ESX. Okay, the next one is the support information. When you log a case with VMware, they generally ask for this key footprint, and then whenever you log a case with the global support services team, the GSS team, okay, vmware.com/support, they ask for these details. You have to take a screenshot or you have to take it into an notepad file, and then you have to provide the serial number, the thumb footprint, and then the fingerprint, whatever we have. Okay, so they will ask this, and then they will use it for your troubleshooting. So here, okay, so if you look at the page down, you also have the BIOS BMC firmware version and the PLSA firmware version. They will look into it to see like if you have some issues, or if there is a customized uh, uh, devices or drivers into your service stack. If you press page down and page up, you'll see two different pages here. Okay, it will have the required details for the system support engineer from the global support services VMware team. Okay, the last option, it will completely reset whatever configuration you have done so far. Okay, so whatever you have made changes, like it does not take a lot of time. It takes 1 or 2 minutes to reconfigure it again, but it completely changes it to the default. You should not change it with the virtual machines running here. Okay, so you have to move the VM, or you have to shut down the VM to another host and then do this reset system configuration. It is like it will impact your virtual machine also. Okay, so this option will impact your virtual machine, whereas doing this option, the restart management network, it will not impact your virtual machine. This is mainly for your ESXi management alone. This will be resetting complete network settings, network configuration, and everything, so that it impacts your virtual machine also. Okay, this will reset your system default. Migrate VMs to another ESXi host, or power down your VMs. It will completely reset. And then what is the other option we had? We had the VM view support information. So this is required for VMware
So
GSS.
if I power down my VM, that won't be hamper, right? I mean, I'm doing the reset.
Yeah, it's already down, right? So your production is impacted, right? So why you are
No,
worrying
no,
about
I'm
it?
saying that
Yeah.
will it delete the VMs or something like that?
No. It is going to reset the configuration. Okay, so only the configuration settings that you have done on the F2 screen, that will get reset. Nothing beyond that. It is not going to change your IP address on your virtual machine, or it is not going to delete any of the content. It will not do anything. Yeah, it is just resetting the configuration thing that you have done. Yeah. Yeah, it will not do anything on your virtual machine. Yeah. So what are the other options? Okay, did I miss something? Okay,
System
view system.
logs.
Yeah, right. So now we are going to discuss the view system logs. Okay, let me save this file for you. Okay, I'll save and upload it. You will find it on the Google Drive. Okay, so you can cross-refer it a little later. Okay, let me take some water here. Any questions so far?
These are all the information will be available at PSOD. I mean system logs.
Yeah, in purple screen of death, it is very much similar to your mini dump. Okay, it won't get all of the details. Okay, when you take a VM support, VM-support, or when you generate a bundle, okay, I'll show you. Okay, so the troubleshooting, I'm enabling it. I'm going to Alt F1. It's enabled now. I press twice. Okay. Only when you run VM-support, it will have complete data. Okay, end to end. PSOD is just only the error, like it's your blue screen of death, similar to your blue screen of death. Only if you run VM-support, it will generate all the complete dump, whatever core dump, like all the commands, right? This is the command that it generates everything. Okay, and you can also do it graphically, as I showed you. So if you go to here, if you go to the host, if you go to the actions, you can also do it graphically. Yes, generates a support bundle. It will generate, and then it will store it in your VM data store. Okay, once it is done, you can see it here. Okay, whatever the changes, like once it is complete, you can see it. Okay, as of now, I'm running it on both command line and graphically. Okay, once it is done, you can see it. Okay, let me show you that once it is generated. But
Okay.
let's go into the system logs. Okay, system logs, the main file that you generally do is check is the syslog file. Okay, whatever the system initialization issues or whatever the service initialization, whatever the you call it as watchdog, right? The monitoring agent. Okay, so management service issues, system initialization, right? When the system is getting initialization, and then if something you're doing a scheduled task, if you're created something to get mapped during the machine startup, or if you want to do a login script or something like that, and if someone is using your DCUI screen and whatever monitoring watchdogs. Okay, these are the main 5 different things that you can find in your system log or syslog.log file. So I'm referring to this one, right? So you guys were seeing it. So the dump is already created. You can just check that 1 minute. So it is getting stored under your VMFS VM data store. Even if you go to the graphical thing, you can see it. You go here under the stuff. Okay. Under your VM data store, go to browse. So here it is, right? So you can just download it and upload it to VMware portal. So it will have complete data of your configuration. Okay, end to end. This is like gunzip format tar file. Okay, it is a zipped file. Okay, VMware will import it and then they will troubleshoot it. Okay, so what I was telling, I was referring to the system files, right? 1 minute. Okay, if you go here, press F2. So the very first thing is the syslog, right? If you press 1, you will see the contents that are related to what I'm referring here. So let me give an escape. Okay, so the first thing is syslog. Syslog contains management service related issues, system initialization. Maybe I'll put it into 5 different lines so that you understand it better. Sorry about that rework. Okay, it's watchdog. Okay, guys. So this is what DCUI is your F2. Okay, whatever you are doing it in F2, it will be under DCUI use. So the next file is the VM kernel log. Okay, VM kernel is the main thing where if some devices are not working, like network or HBA card or whatever, SCSI drives or something, like you have to check the devices discovery here. Okay, SCSI initialization, whatever device related discovery, you will find it on the VM kernel. VM kernel is not nothing but your ESXi OS, right? So ESXi OS is the virtual machine kernel. Okay, so it is a operating system thing. Okay, OS related whatever network related discovery or I'll just say network discovery or storage discovery. Okay, so any external connectivity is not working, so it's like your device manager log. Okay, so whatever related to your device manager, the drivers and then whatever devices, so those things will be under your VM kernel support. Even whatever the VM support thing you did, right, so everything will be put into that, whatever like memory allocation or so a lot of hardware related things will be stored under your VM kernel log. So the next one is your sysboot. I think they have changed the name of this sysboot. Let me check that. It is currently called as config. Okay, so earlier it is called as sysboot. Now they have changed it to config. Both are same. Okay, this is where your VM kernel startup, the initial OS startup, and then the module loads will be listed here. If there is a module that did not load properly or the VM kernel OS did not have the proper services loaded, so you will see the errors related to the sysboot under this VM kernel startup and the module. Okay, the next one is the host D daemon. Host D is nothing but your management, ESXi management daemon. Okay, so if you want to remotely manage your ESXi host, or if you want to take a remote control, so ESXi management daemon. Daemon is nothing but service in Linux, right? So that means it is the ESXi host service. Daemon is equal to service in Windows. Okay, host D is host daemon, ESXi host management daemon. So the host D will have the contents for whoever is the management service. Okay, whoever is connecting to it, and then whatever the changes they are doing, those service logs will be stored under the host D log, including whatever tasks, events, whatever you are doing it from remote. Okay, so even the virtual machine VM related changes you are doing from the host D log, host D connection, everything will be stored here. So when I say VMware related agent, even if you are using vSphere client or vSphere Adobe client, the old web client, okay, and whatever remote connections, everything will get logged into your host D log. Even if you are using a third-party SDK also, that will also get accounted here, and you will be able to find whatever changes you have done. Okay, and the next one is your VPXA. VPXA is mainly for vCenter agent. Okay, vCenter to your ESXi agent will be stored under your VPXA. VPXA is mainly vCenter to ESXi management management logs. So whatever communication you are doing from your vCenter, you are using, if you are using from vCenter to do some changes or whatever it is, so the VPXA will be used. And on the server side, okay, you have something called VPXD. Okay, VPXD is the service that is running for on the ESXi host in order to be able to be managed from the remote vCenter. Okay, VPXA is the agent. So from the vCenter, you will get an agent pushed into your ESXi. On the server side, you will have this daemon running. Okay, VPXD is the daemon, VPXA is the agent. Okay, that is the difference. So both the service, both are related to vCenter, but that is the agent. This one is the daemon service. Okay, so any vCenter related things will be stored there. And then the last one is the VOBD. Okay, VOBD is the VM kernel or the virtual kernel observation log. So whatever the SIM module I was explaining about on the very first class, right? So Ila was asking what exactly is SIM, and then the hardware related contents, and also whenever people are trying to log in, only the failed login attempts, not the success login attempts, only the failed login attempts will be stored here. Even I guess like it also has some contents related to vSAN also. Okay, no, but not in complete details, but there are some minor things that will get stored here. And also if some IO related errors are happening or some input output errors are coming, even that IO error logs are found under the VMware observation logs. Okay, only the failed login attempts, not the successful login attempts, and vSAN related IO error. So these are the things that we get. So these are the different log files that we have in default, okay, here under the main screen. Okay, and any questions so far? Are you guys clear? This is like needed only for interview and exams, okay, but real time you can also cross relate it and use it for yeah, use it. But besides this, okay, you also have some more log files which we can use. Okay, besides the system default log files, you have something called, in Linux we have the var log directory, right, to store all the, this is where the Linux logs will be kept. You guys are familiar with that, right? The var log is the directory where all the Linux related log files are kept. Even ESXi, the origin is from the Linux operating system, right? So whatever log you are seeing, it will be stored under the var log. So when I completed it, I was telling about the failed login attempts, right, under the VOBD. But if in case you want to see when the person was logged in or when he successfully logged in, automatically authentication log, auth.log, everything is stored under the var/log. But authentication is for the authentication success and failures. So it is similar to your Windows system event, right? So you will have an option
Security
called
log.
security log or authentication log. So authentication and success and failure, okay, everything will be stored or captured here. Okay, and it also shows from which machine they are connecting. Okay, the source also, connected from or connection from, made the connection from. And some people will check the DH client log. This is related to your network settings, right? If people are not getting the IP address or address leases, you generally go to the DHCP folder in Windows and then find whether there is a connection issue on the DHCP log, right? Similarly, we'll check this DH client.log to find out whether there is any DHCP related connectivity issues, or whether this machine in general, like in production, will not be using uh, dynamic IP address. But if in case you are using dynamic IP address for your server environment, you can go and verify this DH client.log. This is where you generally look into. I'm just listing down only the commonly used things. Okay, there are a lot of other things. And okay, what I missed here. Okay, so if in case you have something like, if you're doing an update on your ESX, okay, so you want to troubleshoot or you want to check something related to the update, you have installed some latest version or kernel patch or some correction you have made on the bug fix. Okay, you can go and check the ESXi patch installation here. Update or upgrade, no, not the upgrade, update logs only, not the upgrade. Okay, so ESXi patch and update logs can be found under ESXi update. And if you want to find who has logged into the ESXi shell and those things, you can use the shell.log. Okay, and if you want to check like what else, if you want to find the total summary alone, when the server got restarted or when the server booted up. Okay, so when you want to check whether the uptime, you want to check how long the system is up. Okay, some logs will be found under the VMK summary. Okay, you will also refer this log sometimes. Okay, so startup time, shutdown time, okay, and then the uptime. Okay, so number of VMs running. Okay, so some more details will be there. Okay, just look into this. Also sometimes like under VMK summary, you will also find the ESXi top related thing, whatever the services are consuming. Okay, so some level of information on the consumption of the resources also will be found here. Okay, but then if you want to check the historical log, okay, the historical log will be stored under, not under the var log. The historical logs will be stored under var run log. Okay, that is where people will miss. Okay, the archived logs will be stored under var run log. Okay, the old log, the archived logs. There is an archiving process, right? So you can have a circular logging, or you can have a log maximum configuration, and based on the log maximum storage configuration, some of the old logs will get archived, and to some extent you will be seeing it under the var run log. Okay, I think these are the similar important things. And VM kernel, host D, sysboot, VPXA, VOBD, okay, syslog, VMK summary, shell, ESXi update, ASAP. Okay, only one more thing we can mention, that is like VMK warning. Okay, if you want to find if there is some alert or warning, okay, so if you want to do some changes on the hardware if it is not working, so whatever warning or summary can be found under vmk warning.log. Okay, let me show that. I don't know, something is not working here. Okay, so a lot of these log files are here, right? So even besides whatever I have listed there, you will find some more, like the authentication is here, the syslog is here, whatever important logs are here. Okay, even besides what I've mentioned, there are lot of other logs also, but you can check whatever I have explained. Okay, those are the most important ones, like the auth.log, the dhclient.log, the ESXi update.log. So those are the general log files that I generally look into. But if you are using a remote installation, we can check the kickstart. Okay, so auto deploy or the remote installation, right? You can check this. And the syslog is important. VM auth is important. USB also is important. Sometimes if you have loaded your operating system onto your USB, sometimes you will check the USB arbitration log, the USB device log. Okay, and VM kernel, VMK warning. Okay, the VOBD. Okay, so if you look at here, some of the logs are getting stored under the scratch partition. That is also very, very important. Okay, so some of them are getting stored directly into your /var log, and many of them are getting stored into your /scratch/log, the additional one, the VMK summary, the VMK warning. So those things are getting stored into your /scratch partition. Okay, so these are the important logs. Any questions so far, team? You guys are able to follow me? Am I missing some important points? Any questions so far?
No, I missed it. I, I missed on the F2 section where you will be
Uh-huh.
giving the F2 selection. I
Oh,
can't
F2,
recall.
right?
Uh,
See, after you install the operating system, okay, see, this is all installed OS. Okay, so these are the maximum things you have. In Linux, F1, F2, you will press different things, right? So this is
yes.
after the OS installation. It is not as part of the OS loading. Okay, once the OS is completely installed, the very only screen that you get is the F2 screen to make any changes. There is nothing else. Like you will not expect more from this. Okay, you don't have a GUI or you don't have any other
Okay,
way to
it's not
manage.
like Windows default login, something like
No,
that.
nothing like that. Okay, so this is the maximum you get.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the
I
graphical
thought
screen.
it would be
Yeah,
like Windows or Linux would be logging in
no,
and
no, no.
by default.
Nothing
Okay,
will be like that. Okay, only this much. Oh, you are talking about 100 MB and 50 MB OS partition, right? You will not get GUI and those things. This is the GUI. Maximum GUI you will get in Linux.
okay. So coming to
Yeah.
this view
Hmm.
support information, just come
Yeah.
down. There I see.
Hmm. You will
Uh,
get the serial number, license number, thumbprint, and then you also have some more things. Okay, if you do a page down, this will be looking much better in your physical server. Okay, so I'm using virtual machine here, right? So the
correct,
service
correct.
tag will not be here and the asset tag will not be here. Even in your Dell server or HP server, you will get a much more better information. What is the BIOS version, BMC version, the PLSA version? VMware will use it for troubleshooting whether we are on the right level. So they will provide a suggestion whether the very first thing is what they see here only. Okay, they will look for this information only. The
Okay,
VMware,
so
whenever you write, yeah.
coming to this information, the license, how it is the license, I mean, obtained.
I'll explain on the licensing part. Okay, so we have
Okay,
different licensing model. I'll explain that in
okay,
detail.
okay.
Okay, guys. So as of now, today's session, what we have done is we have discussed on the ESXi partitioning. I know like we have covered too many things. Okay, it might be new for many of those. Spend some time. I'll upload this Excel sheet into the Google Drive. Okay, look into this. Just see what are the different options we have on the configuration on the same screen only here only, right? Okay, this one, and then the DCUI option. Okay, whatever the options we have, and then the log files. So these are the important things that we have covered today. Okay, and I think I'll not start anything new for now. Okay, we'll discuss on what are the various options to manage the ESXi on Wednesday. I think we are good. Okay, so I'll okay, yeah. So these are the 3 things that we plan to complete. Any questions, team, before we conclude? If I dump too many things, it will be too much again. Okay, I'll stop the recording. Okay, just look into